February 1980, a Tuesday night in Marshalltown, Iowa. 18 farmers crowded into Sullivan's John Deere dealership, shoulder to shoulder in folding chairs. The showroom lights gleamed off a brand new forest green 4440 tractor like it was made of emeralds. Rick Sullivan, the dealer, stood beside it with the smile of a man who'd already spent his commission. "Gentlemen," he said, "we're at a turning point. Corn was $3 a bushel. Land values climbing 15% a year. The economy booming." Rick patted the 4440's hood. 90 horsepower, air conditioning, power shift transmission. This isn't just a tractor, it's your ticket to the future. He paused for effect. And right now, John Deere Credit is offering 12% financing over 7 years, just $670 a month. 17 farmers leaned forward. One sat perfectly still. Rick had done his homework. He knew exactly who was farming with 20-year-old Farmalls, ancient cases, rusted-out internationals. These were his targets. He showed them charts, productivity comparisons that made their old equipment look like horse-drawn plows. A 1958 Farmall can do 12 acres in 10 hours. This 4440, 22 acres, that's nearly double. Time is money, gentlemen. The math seemed bulletproof. Most of these guys grossed $80,000 to $120,000 a year. An $8,000 annual payment for a tractor that would boost productivity by 30%? That's $24,000 to $36,000 in extra income. You'd be crazy to say no. 16 farmers signed that night. Walter Brennan walked out empty-handed. Tom Henderson caught him in the parking lot, practically running. "Walter, you're not trading the 560. Walter was 61. Been farming since 1937. Owned 400 acres, free and clear. His Farmall had 11,000 hours on it, but it still fired up every morning." "Nope. You're leaving money on the table, Walter. These new tractors are twice as productive." "Maybe so," Walter said quietly, "but I'm not taking on debt at my age." Tom shook his head, like he was watching a man refuse a winning lottery ticket. "This is the time to leverage, Walter. Borrow cheap money, buy productive equipment, make more profit. That's how you build wealth." "That's how you go broke when things turn," Walter said. "Things aren't going to turn. Look around. This is the new normal." Walter got in his truck. "Hope you're right, Tom, but I've seen booms before. They always end." Spring 1980 rolled in. Those 16 farmers took delivery of their gleaming John Deere tractors. Tom got his 4440 for $45,200. Jim Wilson went bigger, a 4640 for $52,800. Between them all, $782,000 in financed equipment, monthly payments ranging from $600 to $900. They planted their crops feeling like kings. The new tractors were everything Rick promised: powerful, comfortable, fast. Tom finished planting 3 days early. Worth every penny, he told his wife Betty. Walter planted with the same 1958 Farmall he'd had for 22 years. Then 1981 hit like a freight train nobody saw coming. Interest rates exploded. The Federal Reserve, desperate to crush inflation, pushed the prime rate to 21.5%. A grain embargo shattered exports. Corn prices collapsed from $310 to $280, then $240, then $210. Land values stopped climbing and started falling. Here's the twist those 16 farmers didn't see in the fine print. Their loans had variable rates. 12% became 15, then 18. Tom Henderson's payment jumped from $670 a month to $840. Jim Wilson's went from $780 to $970. And their income got cut in half as corn prices cratered. By 1982, 14 of the 16 were drowning. Tom went back to Rick Sullivan's dealership in March. "Rick, I can't make these payments. The rate jumped 6 points. I'm at $840 a month with $2 corn. I can't do it." Rick, watching his own world collapse as equipment sales evaporated, could only shrug. "Talk to John Deere Credit. There's nothing I can do." John Deere Credit had one policy: miss 3 payments, lose the tractor. Tom missed 2, scrambled to catch up. missed 3 more. In October 1982, a repo truck pulled into his field and took the 4440 while Tom was mid-row, planting. 2.5 years of ownership. $21,680 in payments, gone. The tractor sold at auction for $18,200. Tom still owed $20,200 for a tractor he no longer had. The repo triggered his other creditors. By March 1983, Tom Henderson lost everything. 480 acres his family had farmed since 1947, foreclosed. Betty cried for 3 days straight. They moved to Cedar Rapids. Tom got a job at the Quaker Oats plant, making $8.50 an hour. He died of a heart attack in 1997 at age 62. Betty said the stress of losing the farm killed him. 13 of the 16 lost their farms entirely by 1985. 3 survived by selling most of their land and declaring bankruptcy. They kept farming, but were shells of what they'd been, broken men working a fraction of the acres they once had. Walter Brennan? He just kept farming with his 1958 Farmall 560. When corn hit 210, Walter's income fell from $68,000 to $48,000. It hurt, but he had no equipment payment. That $670, $840 monthly difference, $8,000 to $10,000 a year, was the difference between survival and destruction. The 560 kept running. When the engine started burning oil in 1984, Walter rebuilt it himself. $380 in parts, one weekend. When the hydraulic pump seized in 1986, he rebuilt it. $140. Clutch wore out in 1988. $95 for a new disc. Total maintenance cost, 1980 to 1990, $4,180, $418 per year average. His neighbors had been paying $8,000 to $10,000 per year in equipment payments. By 1990, Walter was one of only 4 farmers still operating from that original group of 18. Rick Sullivan's dealership closed in 1985. The business his father started in 1948, gone. Rick ended up working as a parts clerk in Waterloo, making $12 an hour. Died in 2011, never financially recovered. Walter farmed until 1995. Retired at 76. Sold his 400 acres for $1,450 per acre, $580,000. Combined with savings, he retired with about $780,000. The 16 who took Rick's advice, 13 lost everything. 3 survived broken. Combined, they maybe recovered $300,000 total from land sales after debt. 16 families, $300,000 total. Walter alone had $780,000. But here's where this story gets truly unbelievable. In 2024, Walter Brennan is 105 years old, still alive, living in Grandview Care Center in Marshalltown, sharp as ever. His grandson Danny farms the original 400 acres, plus another 320 Danny bought with inheritance money. 720 acres total. And occasionally, for special occasions, Danny fires up that 1958 Farmall 560. It's 66 years old now. Still runs. At a 2023 family reunion, Walter's great-grandson, Danny's 14-year-old son, asked the question everyone wants answered. Grandpa Walter, why didn't you trade the tractor when everyone else did? Walter, 104 years old, thought for a long moment. Because I'd seen it before, son. Seen dealers tell farmers to borrow and expand. Seen it in the 20s before the Depression. Seen it in the 50s before the squeeze. Every time the pattern is the same. Economy's good. Dealers push debt. Farmers borrow. Economy turns. Farmers fail. But didn't the dealer believe what he was saying? Oh, absolutely. Rick Sullivan believed every word. He wasn't lying. He was just wrong. Wrong because he didn't know history. Didn't understand that booms always end. So how did you know to say no? Walter's answer cuts to the bone. I didn't know for sure. Could have been wrong. Maybe the booms would have lasted. But I'd rather be wrong and safe than right and broke. I'd rather farm with old equipment on land I own than farm with new equipment on land the bank owns. He paused, exhausted from talking, then added, of 18 farmers at that meeting, I'm the only one still alive. Only one whose family still farms. That's not because I was smarter. It's because I was more scared. And in farming, scared is often safer than confident. The story gets even more devastating when you look at the human cost. In 1983, alone, Walter attended 7 farm auctions, 7 families he'd known for decades, losing everything. At Tom Henderson's auction in March, Walter stood in the back and watched Tom's 440 sell for $18,200. The tractor was 3 years old, had maybe 2,000 hours, looked brand new. In a normal market, it would have brought 35,000, but every farmer in Iowa was selling equipment. Supply massive, demand zero. Tom stood off to the side with Betty, watching strangers bid on the machine he thought would secure his future. When the gavel fell, Betty started crying. Tom put his arm around her. They looked destroyed. Walter wanted to say something. Anything. But what could he say? I'm sorry you lost your farm because you took the dealer's advice. That wouldn't help. So Walter just stood there, witnessed the destruction, went home feeling sick. Tom never spoke to Walter again. Cut ties with everyone from farming. When Tom died in 1997, Walter drove to Cedar Rapids for the funeral. Betty was there, looking old and tired. Walter offered condolences. Betty just nodded, said thank you, moved to the next person. No conversation. The gulf between those who survived and those who failed was too wide to bridge, but Walter's 560 became legendary. By 1990, young farmers would visit his farm just to see the tractor that was 32 years old and still working daily. One kid, Jake Morrison, whose father lost his farm in the crisis, asked in 1992, "How much longer can that 560 run?" Walter, 73, said, "Long as I maintain it. Engine's been rebuilt twice. Transmission's original but strong. Could run another 30 years if someone keeps taking care of it." But doesn't it bother you farming with old equipment when everyone else has new? Used to bother me in 1980 when everyone got new tractors, felt left behind, but then they all went broke and I didn't. Now it doesn't bother me at all. Jake took that lesson to heart, started farming in 1995 with rented ground and used equipment, bought his first 160 acres in 2003 with cash he'd saved, never financed equipment. By 2020, Jake owned 640 acres debt-free. He credits Walter's example with teaching him sustainable farming. Last year, a farming podcast called Legacy Agriculture interviewed Walter via video. The host asked, "Mr. Brennan, of 18 farmers at that 1980 meeting, you're the only one who said no. What made you different?" Walter, 104 at the time, answered, "I wasn't smarter, wasn't a better farmer. I'd just seen it before. My father lost a farm to debt in 1932. I watched that happen when I was 13. That memory never left me. So when Rick Sullivan told us to borrow and expand, I heard my father's voice saying, 'Debt will kill you.'" What would you say to young farmers today being pressured to upgrade equipment on credit? Walter's answer was firm. Ask yourself this: if your income gets cut in half tomorrow, can you still make the payment? If the answer is no, don't take the debt. Equipment comes and goes. Land you own lasts forever. Always choose ownership over appearance. Always choose safety over growth. Always choose boring and solvent over exciting and broke. The interview aired. Over 100,000 farmers listened. Today, Danny still brings his children to visit Walter at the care home. They show him videos on their phones of the 560 still running, still working. Walter smiles, nods, remembers. Of 18 farmers who sat in that showroom in February 1980, Walter is the last one breathing, the only one whose family still farms. The 16 who said yes are gone, their families scattered, their farms absorbed by larger operations or sold to investors. The one who said no remains. That's not luck. That's wisdom born from watching his father lose everything in 1932. That's the courage to say no when 17 other men said yes. That's understanding that the newest tool isn't always the right tool. That boring beats exciting when the stakes are your family's future. The 1958 Farmall 560 Walter refused to trade, is 66 years old now. Still runs, still works, still represents the decision that saved everything. 18 farmers walked into that meeting. 16 believed the dealer. 16 believed the boom would last forever. 16 believed debt was a tool for growth. 13 lost their farms entirely. 3 survived broken and poor. 1, the scared one, the cautious one, the one who remembered history, kept his farm, kept his land, kept his dignity, and lived to see his 105th birthday. If this story made you think twice about the difference between smart growth and dangerous debt, don't forget to subscribe. Sometimes the person who says no when everyone else says yes is the only one who survives. Walter Brennan proved it. And somewhere in Iowa, a 66-year-old tractor still runs, still works, still whispers the same lesson. Choose ownership over appearance, safety over growth, boring and solvent over exciting and broke, every single time.